Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of the podcast. I'm joined today once again by one of my great friends, Matty Reed. Welcome to the show, man.
Thanks for having me again. I think this is the third time. Hopefully many more.
Yeah, I'm always down to keep it rolling, and hopefully we can top the last one we had where we were on a rooftop overlooking the city of Bangkok. That'll be pretty hard to beat, but it's about the substance of the conversation, I like to think.
Yeah, well, I'm in a basement in Denver, so it's pretty much the same, right?
Yeah, virtually identical. Yeah, that was a fun one. The last one we did, it was we tried to record it spontaneously with these very low quality mics, and it was just incredibly windy up there. And I think it blew over at one point. Like the camera just completely fell over, and yeah, it was a little bit of a shit show, but good conversation nonetheless. So speaking of Bangkok and Southeast Asia, Maddie just got back from an extended trip abroad. I think 7 months, right? 6 or 7 months.
Yeah, a little over 7 months.
Yeah, 7 months doing the full digital nomad thing and living out most of our dreams. I think I've always had a fantasy of being full digital and just living out there, doing a little bit of international arbitrage, I guess, making the American salary while you're paying the fares in Southeast Asia or Latin America. So how does it feel to be back, man, and living the American lifestyle all over again?
It feels good. I mean, there's pros and cons. There's pros and cons to everywhere you live. I think it's got plenty of pros and plenty of cons. So I definitely like came back immediately. Like seeing my cat was a special moment. Being
Hmm.
being abroad for 7.5 months, not being with my cat, that was like probably the hardest part. So reuniting with him was great. And then like I just went to a wedding. One of my best friends got married. I got to see like all my friends again, and it really felt like we just picked up where we left off. It wasn't too different.
Hmm.
I mean, I think the biggest like con is probably just readjusting to the prices of everything. Like I'm just getting a regular meal is hard to get for less than $20.
Yeah.
And I was like getting real comfortable with like $5 meals in Southeast Asia. And yeah, slurping the same noodles that I was slurping in Japan costs about twice as much. So I
Hmm.
need to like adjust to the new reality. But yeah, I mean, there's nothing like being back home. I feel like America is fantastic for many reasons. I was staying at my dad's house on the California coast for the month when I got back, and it's just paradise. I mean, I no complaints. I definitely think I'm going back abroad,
Hmm.
probably again to Bali, Southeast Asia. Um, I'm already starting to think about 2025 and where I'm going to travel to next.
Nice. That's exciting. Yeah, we were chatting about that when we met up in San Diego. And yeah, some people get that itch and you never feel like you can satisfy it, and other people get homesick really quickly. It's kind of interesting how when you throw somebody into that environment, how they can adapt. Some people can, some people can't, it seems like. And you're definitely on the package of fully adapting, fully integrating into the international lifestyle. So where do you think you would hit up next?
Honestly, I would love to go back to Bali in Southeast Asia. I think the hardest part about that region is it's just that the time zones are just pretty much opposite with America. So if you are kind of like on a manager schedule and you need to have a lot of meetings, be on a lot of calls, um, then you're gonna have a rough time. If you're more of like a maker on a maker schedule and you're kind of focused time, heads down building, then it's better in some ways. You really don't have as much distraction. There's less people that are trying to hit you up because it's the middle of the night for most of them. And then
Hmm.
there's an understanding that if they do send you a message, it's probably when you're asleep and you're gonna just answer it whenever you're awake and able to answer it. So I mean, there's benefits. It's just it's tough if you have a specific type of work where you just have to be on someone else's schedule. So I kind
Hmm.
of fortunately am mostly making my own schedule, mostly heads down building. And I also actually have some teammates that are in Southeast Asia. So it worked out pretty well that I was able to work with them in their time zone. So doing that again for me, I don't think would be a problem.
Hmm.
Um, and I'm like, as much as I want to be on an American salary, I'm still building a startup. So I'm not really on, I'm still, in the startup struggle, still founder frugal.
Hmm.
So really just saving money, lowering the expenses, that's a huge part of it. Really, just being in Bali, you're saving a lot of money. Living in paradise and saving money is a pretty good deal. So Bali's pretty much top of the list. I
Yeah.
would say there are some other spots that I'm keeping my eye on. I've heard some great things about Costa Rica, Portugal. These are
Mm-hmm.
all great digital nomad hotspots. So definitely keeping them on the radar. But yeah, it's probably Southeast Asia is still top of the list.
Yeah. Yeah. That seems like the safest bet for most people in terms of bang for your buck, safety, infrastructure. It's kind of got everything on the list that you really need to fully dive in as a nomad. Um, yeah, it's I had the fantasy and I've dabbled with it, as we've talked about. And last winter went over to Portugal to visit my parents who were over there, and then to Prague. And it was a crazy experience, having your time zone completely flipped because I am on that side where there's a lot of meetings and like check-ins, and I'm available on Teams virtually throughout the 8-hour workday or whatever, or generally in that ballpark. So that was tough, having to work from 6 p.m. until 1 in the morning. And it just like required a total flip of my mindset around work. Like waking up was like, okay, immediately into leisure time, exploring museums, trying food, drinking. Like I was like enjoying the day as if it were the night essentially. And then nighttime was the grind. And I would come in there, after a few glasses of mulled wine. Don't tell my manager, but it was a great time, great experience. I don't know if I could pull it off long term though. I think, like you're saying, being on the founders or the maker schedule is definitely more doable. Um, so any recommendations for somebody who is thinking about diving into it?
Yeah, well, I think we should probably define the maker manager schedule because I think that was originally coined by Paul Graham in one of his essays.
Mm,
And it basically just describes these two kind of modes of operating. And some people kind of operate in both pretty equally, and some people are one or the other. If you're kind of an engineer, you're a maker. Your schedule kind of lends itself to focus time, and you should really block out focus time for yourself. So, like, 3, 4 hour blocks of time where you have no distractions. And a manager schedule is a lot more meetings. You have to make phone calls, you have to be on call, and that basically means your schedule should be filled up with meetings, talking to other people. And if
mhm,
that's what your schedule looks like, then it's going to be rough if you're in a completely different time zone than most of your clients or most of the people you're meeting with. So that would be the first recommendation is like figure out where you are on that spectrum. If you're like 90% maker, then yeah, I think the world's your oyster. You can kind of go wherever you want. If you're mostly on a manager schedule, then stick to your time zones. And there's still plenty of places you can travel to and be in a time zone. So it just does limit where you can travel to, unfortunately. So you're kind of limited to South. If you're American, you're probably limited to Central and South America. Portugal, maybe it's a little more doable, but yeah, Southeast Asia, East Asia, India, that's going to be really tough. So that's my
mhm.
first bit of advice. But yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, there's a ton of advice about how to do this right, and I think one of the biggest lessons learned for me is when you're traveling abroad, make sure that you're living with people that share your purpose for why you're traveling. For me, I was pretty clear that my purpose was, lower my expenses, get my work done, and explore the local culture when I could, especially on weekends or like if I could take a day off and adjust my schedule so that I'm still working 5 to 6 days a week, but then giving myself a little time to adventure. But if you're living with someone that is on vacation, then you're really going to struggle. Both of you are actually going to struggle because they probably expect to go on this trip with you. They want you to come on these adventures with them throughout the week, and you're going to have FOMO because you can't go, or you're not going to get your work done. And you're going to go on these adventures and you're going to come back to America and be like, damn, I only worked a few days a week and I didn't really get shit done. And so like
Hmm.
that's not ideal. So for me personally, it worked for me to actually have my own separate uh, Airbnb from my friends because I was
Hmm.
traveling pretty much with friends for about half the trip, and they were living together most of the time, and I actually typically would get a spot kind of down the street from them, which I called my shack because it was always just like a tiny little room with like just the amenities that I needed, you know, a shower, a toilet, and a desk and Wi-Fi. And so I always had my space where I could get work done. And then I could like
Hmm.
overlap plans with them whenever I wanted to, but it was a lot easier to say no to all of the constant adventures that they're going on. And to be clear, there's nothing wrong with that kind of travel. Like vacation is great. Like if you can do that, do it. I think it's awesome. But just for me, I wasn't able to do that. It wasn't the purpose for my travel. And I would recommend figuring out what is your purpose before you go and making sure that you're just aligned with the people you're with. It's going to make it so much easier to get work done and enjoy the travel. So that's
Mm.
one big lesson.
Yeah. Kind of reminds me of like if you were to be living in a college like party house and then be working your 9 to 5 or something, working from home, even worse, and just surrounded by that environment, like it just would not match up at all. Even, no matter how well you get along with the people in the house.
Yep, absolutely. I have plenty more lessons if you want me to go into them. I actually just recently wrote an essay, kind of outlining some of the lessons that I learned in kind of a humorous way, but also there were some real profound nuggets of wisdom that I returned with. And yeah, I wrote about these lessons kind of as kind of as a reminder to my future self because I know I'm going to be doing this again. And so I really want to take these lessons to heart, but also hopefully other people can learn from them too if they're trying to, you know, do a similar type of travel, slow
Hmm.
travel, you know, really trying to stay in one place for a few weeks at a time, months at a time. Um,
Hmm.
then yeah, read the essay. You could probably get some more lessons. I'm happy to go into more of them if you want.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. I mean, that essay was such a good read. I highly encourage everyone listening to check it out. We'll share a link to it in this video, in the description of this video. But yeah, that was awesome. I really loved the blend of like humor with wisdom about life and how to improve your life and how to take some of what you're learning while you're traveling and apply it in your life. Also mixed in with some of the most ridiculous things that you see when you landed in Bangkok and how it was just you were thrown into this random water gun fight, right? Or this water festival that was happening across the entire city and how somehow you were able to extract some lessons from that. So I'm just curious, what your takeaway from a very random spontaneous experience like that was.
Yeah, yeah. So you're describing when when I landed in Bangkok for the first day of Songkran, which is the Thai New Year. So it's basically a citywide, countrywide celebration of the New Year. It's a 3 day festival, and basically everybody goes outdoors, and it's a giant water gun fight. So people are like splashing around, hosing each other. They have like giant, like kids are walking around with giant water guns, and it's pretty wild. I landed in Bangkok completely coincidentally on the first day of Songkran. I probably should have done my homework, but I didn't realize, and I got kind of thrown into this. And there's really no avoiding it. When you're in Thailand during Songkran, you can't really even walk a block or two without getting soaked,
Hmm.
which is hilarious. And I learned that really, really fast. I made some reservations at like nice restaurants and was walking to the restaurant, and people would drive by hanging out the side of their trucks and blast me straight in the face with water. And then I would walk another few steps, and like there'd be Thai people, like they have this kind of clay dirt that they play with. They like slap it all over you. You basically get covered in this clay. And so I basically showed up at this nice restaurant just like covered in shit. I was just like soaking wet, just like covered from head to toe in like dirt and filth. And obviously like the nice restaurant, they know it's Songkran. They were like, okay, this guy clearly wasn't expecting this, so they still let me eat. And
Nice.
uh and yeah, I mean that was a pretty wild time. Like I basically, purchased a little water gun and joined in the parades and joined in the water gun fights. But yeah, I think the more interesting part to me was really digging into why this was happening and like how did we get to this giant water gun fight?
Hmm.
And it's really fascinating the reasons that kind of the cultural significance of the Songkran celebration um, is a lot more profound, and it's really rooted in like Buddhist practice. And I kind of was interested in the cultural significance just as much as the craziness. So I really dug in and started to look into like why did this happen? How is this like this? And I ended up, going to Buddhist temples and learning a little bit about the history of Songkran, and participated in some of the rituals. Um,
Wow, you're probably like 1% of American tourists that that go that far, you know?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I certainly was the only like American tourist that was involved in the ritual when I did it. But basically, the ritual that I did while I was there was kind of pouring this flower petal infused water over statues of the Buddha, and it's supposed to represent kind of cleansing the past year's misfortune and really kind of cleansing and purifying your soul for the upcoming year.
Hmm.
And I thought it was very powerful, like that there's these really deep, significant Buddhist practices and rituals. And then if you walk, just a few blocks away from the temple, then you're into the super soaker fight.
That's
So
crazy.
so yeah, that was a cool little bit of kind of peeling back that that layer that like most tourists probably just see the super soaker fights, but peeling that back and you actually can see some really interesting parts of the culture that are thousands of years old.
Hmm. What do you think you picked up from, I guess, if it's Eastern religion or if it's, I guess, that Eastern way of thinking in terms of the Buddhist practices and how it kind of filtered throughout society in Thailand or anywhere else? Did you take away any lessons or kind of ways that they carry themselves in their day-to-day life that you can apply now?
Yeah, I mean, I think you can probably pull something from all cultures. There's probably lessons learned.
Hmm.
Everywhere I went, I was taking little bits of the culture, and I think like Buddhism and Eastern religion um, resonates with me a lot because it's a lot more introspective
Yep.
than Western religions. I'm not a religious person myself, but I do consider myself an introspective person, and I have a mindfulness practice, and I think that actually aligns better with Buddhist practice than it does with a lot of Western tradition.
Hmm.
So I definitely resonated a lot with that kind of um, religious mindset. But I mean,
Hmm.
I didn't like leave Southeast Asia thinking I was a Buddhist. I
Yeah.
I think that the religious practices over there are really significant, but I wasn't about to like completely dive all. I'm kind of just dipping my toes in different cultures and different religions, which is
Hmm.
something I do with all religions. I think there's plenty to learn from all religions and all cultures. So I don't think
Hmm.
I'm just gonna like adopt anything wholesale, but yeah, it
Yeah.
definitely resonated with me a lot.
Yeah, I felt the same way. I was actually hoping you'd go that direction because I had that same reaction, I guess, to Buddhism, how it's giving you all the tools for you to figure out things on your own. It's not really giving you this like prescription or, not the Ten Commandments style of like, this is the way to live. It's more like you need to figure yourself out. You need to spend time with yourself. You need to kind of follow this framework in some ways, but over time you'll be able to chart your own course, and I found that super interesting because it's kind of like putting the ball in your court as opposed to just being really forceful and like regimented about it. So yeah, sounds like we're right on the same page with that one.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, even with that understanding of Buddhism, which resonates with both of us, it sounds like there's still these like contradictions, and it's still kind of a mass religion. And so, like, traveling around Southeast Asia, in Thailand especially, you'll see like massive gold statues of the Buddha. And
Hmm.
Buddha basically is teaching you to just let go of these material things. Don't covet, don't spend extravagantly. And then
That's
all of a
funny.
sudden you're seeing this like giant gold statue and you're like, man, is that what the Buddha would have wanted? I'm not sure. It's not my place to decide, but yeah, I mean these cultural contradictions are something that kind of stick out to you when you're traveling. And certainly happened with me. Like as I was going around, there's these little things that kind of stick out, and you're like, man, I don't know if they think about it like I am, but just coming from this third person perspective, it is very contradictory, or it feels very contradictory.
Yeah, I never thought of that. That's hilarious though. The giant gold statue, it's like 30 feet tall. It's like, but be minimalist, be content with what you have right now. It's like, except unless you're the Buddha, unless you're the Buddha, you get a giant gold temple and you get people kissing your feet and praying at you every day. Super interesting. So, yeah, man. So I'm curious to hear what we talked a little bit about this in person, but some of the things that you've got in the pipeline, some of the ideas you have for your writing and expanding that, and generally what you've been working on.
Yeah, so since we talked the first time, that was about a year ago. I've been working on my startup called TimeAlign. So that's been by far the biggest focus for me.
Hmm.
And then on the side, I kind of made some goals for the year. Um, One of them was to write more and to really just share my experiences, track data, and share experiences. That was kind of one of my big 2024 goals. And so far, I feel like I've been doing that kind of well, but I really would like to create more content. Um, but I don't want to create content just to create content. I'm like really wary of just trying to generate like shorts or like generate reels. I think there's a place for that, but I don't think it's what I'm good at. And like if I try, like I write these essays and they're way too long, and I maybe you can chop them up at some point, but I'm more interested in creating kind of long form content. And something that you and I chatted about is even if I write a great essay, like most people don't read. So like
Nah, people don't do that.
yeah, especially, I mean, my essay is on the longer side, and it's broken up into 13 lessons, so you can take it at your own pace. But at the end of the day, it's a pretty long essay, and I'm interested in trying to use essays as a way of clarifying my thoughts and really kind of digging into ideas and trying to formulate them in a way that resonates. And so I'm using that as kind of my playground to really produce the original content. But I think I'm more interested in eventually converting my written essays into longer form video. And I think that's just a lot more consumable for people. Personally, I watch a lot more long form YouTube than I do reading essays. And it's really, at the end of the day, it's like create what you know best. And what I know best is long form YouTube.
Hmm.
And so I think I'm the direction I want to head in 2025 is to convert some of these essays into YouTube content that's maybe 10 in the 10 to 20 minute range.
Hmm.
So I'm starting to formulate some ideas about how to do this. I would really like to build a pipeline so that I could kind of automate some of the process of taking an essay and converting it into video. And I think that there's a lot of new tools that are coming out that are making this more and more possible. So I'm definitely interested in exploring these, and I think that's going to be one of my kind of focuses for 2025 is like, hey, let's convert what I already have done into YouTube content that's a lot more consumable, but hopefully keeps that same kind of flavor, that like mixture of humor and wisdom, which is what I'm aiming for. So it'll be
Hmm.
fun. We'll see. I haven't actually created the content yet for YouTube, but I think the step one is really just learning how to write good essays. And
Hmm.
I've written, I think, 6 essays on my Medium account, and my goal was to write one a month, average one a month this year. So I'm probably not going to hit that goal. Although one thing I did learn about writing and just creating content in general, um, I have a bunch of like half-written essays. Like I have these ideas, I write the essays, I get to a point where it's like clear, it's like a lot more clear than when I started, but it's not quite there yet. So I just kind of put it on hold, and then I write another essay whenever I have another idea worth exploring, and then I put that on hold, and then eventually I have I have kind of a handful of like partially written essays where I can kind of go back to them and pick them up once I have more inspiration or more insight about how to proceed. And some of them I'll just throw away. Like I don't think it's worth finishing all of them, but yeah, I think that's generally where I'm at with how I'm thinking about content. Um, I get this feeling that you like the prime time to start a YouTube channel was probably like 2012 or something.
Hmm.
But I definitely don't think it's too late. I think that YouTube is, it's been growing consistently ever since it started, and it's slowly just taking over TV. And
Hmm.
um, and I don't want to play around with shorts. I don't think that's my place. But I think the YouTube path is very interesting to me. So that's kind of how I'm thinking about it now.
That's a rad idea, man. I mean, if it's anything like the blog that you wrote, I think the world needs more of that. Needs more of the humor and the wisdom combined. I hadn't seen much like that. At least in the space that I'm in, and creators that I'm keeping up with. Everyone comes from that like ultra disciplined, maybe bordering on preachy at times way of getting their message across. And I try so hard to avoid it in stuff that I make, but it's really hard when you're trying to give good advice, and when you give advice, you pretty much tell people what you should be doing. And it's hard to tap dance around that in a way that either sets an example or makes them realize it by opening their eyes up through humor or other ways. So I think that's a really, really awesome idea, and looking forward to more of it in the future.
Yeah, I mean, I think you and I have chatted about this, but this is actually an idea that I think Ali Abdal introduced to me, who's a YouTuber. But this concept of being a guru or a guide, and the world needs more guides and less gurus. And
Hmm.
the difference is guides actually did it. Guides are doing it. Guides went through it, and they're trying to help you go through it too. And that can apply to any stage of life, any niche. And then the gurus are just telling you to do things. It's kind of like do as I say, not as I do.
Yeah.
That would be like me writing an essay about traveling just from my home in California, never having left. It's like I can
Yeah.
probably come up with some wisdom maybe that resonates, but I think it's a lot more powerful if you actually have gone through it, especially if you have stories that can back it up. I
Hmm.
think that's a lot more powerful. It resonates a lot more. And I see it in your content too. I mean, you're creating content about what you're going through. You're showing people what you've done. You're actually creating B-roll content of you like living the life. and saying, "Hey, I'm doing this now. This is working for me, or this isn't working for me." And at least from my perspective, that's one of the best parts of your content. It's like you
Mm.
can actually connect with people that are living it rather than people that are just telling you you should do this, you should do that.
That's great to hear, man. Thank you for that. I'm not, that was, as I said earlier, always one of my biggest concerns about being too preachy or being that guru, like you're talking about, instead of the guide. And I think it's an important shift to make, more towards leading by example rather than telling people what they should do or kind of regurgitating what you heard or read in books. It's like, no, just go to the source of that information. We can all get the same suite of self-help books and read them and improve our lives. And it's easy to do. It's not easy to do, but anybody can do it essentially. So you don't need yet another person saying the same things. And I don't know if this quote is related, but it popped into my head. I was reading Hormozy's book recently, and $100 million offers, and he talked or leads, and he said that there's no such thing as too long, just too boring. And it kind of tied into what you're talking about with the long form content and YouTube being maybe past its prime or whatever. But I feel like there's always going to be that space for novel ideas, creativity, expression of your own journey, like what you're going through, even if it's the same exact subject. Like take self-improvement, for example, because it's close to both of us. But what you're doing to improve your lives could be completely different, or the experience that you're going through as you go through that process could be completely different than the next person who's read the same books and is trying to get to the same goal. So, yeah, so I guess no such thing as too long, or no such thing as um, there's no new ideas, I guess, under the sun, and you can always put your own spin on them to make them original. Yeah, that man makes he's just so to the point. Like it's hard not to respect what he's doing and to be inspired by it, because it's like, here's exactly what I did. Like literally, it's all the proof, all the receipts, the tweets from 2012, the account statements in the book from 2012, like right before he blew up, and or when he started to get the ball rolling on his gym business, gym launch. It's incredible, man. Like the authenticity is through the roof for somebody who has that big of a following. It's really rare to come across.
Yeah, I think Hormozy is kind of the best example of be a guide, not a guru.
Hmm.
And he has like a cult following, but it's not even it's like organic. He's not telling people to follow him for any reason beyond just like, hey, I'm gonna give you value,
Hmm.
and you if you're getting value from it, keep coming back for more because that's all he's dishing out. So I really
Hmm.
respect him. I'm sure his content doesn't resonate with everybody. It's pretty
Hmm.
hardcore, but it
Yeah.
resonates with me. I love the
Hmm.
hardcore and I love
Yeah.
the just authentic, to the point, don't sugarcoat it. So that's great. I mean, I think he's definitely an inspiration for me and how I would like to create content. Um,
Hmm.
I think he's done a bunch of incredible things in his life, and then he also, has gone through the shitter, and he's told all of the stories as they happened. So that is definitely an inspiration for how I would like to create content moving forward too.
Yeah, for sure, an inspiration. And another thing, I guess while we're still hyping up Hormozy, just to throw one last thing in that has made me give me pause, I guess, recently, was instead of saying like here's how to or 10 steps to do this or that, it's here's how I did this thing, or here's how I did these 10 things to change my life. And I feel like that small little shift is really powerful, to transform from a guru to a guide in some ways. So I was going to ask you too, speaking of, creating content and creating your work or your hobbies and side projects, what is your creative process like? How do you get into a creative flow? I know traveling helps a lot, at least it does for me. But how do you get the new ideas coming and keep it fresh?
Yeah, so I create little notes for ideas. I have thousands of little notes of ideas. So everything starts with an idea. Um, I'm starting to figure out better process for, instead of just kind of scatterbrain like creating ideas, I'm trying to kind of bucket them. So, for example, I'm thinking about how to create content around uh, like health hacks or like how to be founder frugal, like how to be resourceful.
Hmm.
And there's like and like thinking about these buckets is a lot easier than trying to create an entire piece of content or entire essay around one idea, which I have done in some of my past essays. Um, and I think that there's a place for that. It works if it's like a really compelling idea and I really have enough story and kind of insight to back it up with a whole essay. But I think the most recent essay that I wrote, kind of 13 lessons learned about a specific subject, that seems to be an easier way to produce good content. So just starting to think about bucketing things.
Hmm.
So now like I can still create all these little random ideas here and there, but now I can start to think about, okay, well, where would this fit in? Is this a profound, compelling enough idea that it warrants its own piece of content? Again, I'm trying to like aim for like longer form, so 10 to 20 minute YouTube videos or 10 to 20 minute reads if it's an essay. And it has to be a pretty compelling idea if you want to try to turn that into long form content. So that is one of the ways I'm thinking about content now is really trying to put it into buckets. And if it does kind of stick out to me and I really am just like I need to write about this one idea, then it's fine. I'll separate it out and write about it. Beyond that, I think like some of the process that I'm learning is well, first of all, actually scheduling time to write. That's a really big one because like writing is one of those things where the inspiration comes and it goes and it's not super reliable, but just starting to write like for 10 minutes, 15 minutes, you'll get going. Like it's one of those things where, it's the inertia of getting started is difficult, but then the momentum to continue writing is way easier. So
Hmm.
that's something else I've learned is just like schedule it and be disciplined about just sitting down and like even if I feel like I don't have any ideas, if I sit down, I throw on my like soundscapes, I'm in the zone. I'm like, okay, I got an hour to write. Let's just put something on paper, or even let's go back to something I already wrote and start editing. And then you're going to come up with more ideas and actually continue writing whatever you previously wrote.
Mm.
And so that's a big one. Just like inspiration is fleeting. Definitely grab on if you have inspiration and start writing if you have it in the moment, but don't rely on that. I mean, that's kind
Hmm.
of a cliche, but I think just actually scheduling it and having the discipline to stick with it is really important. And then, at least for me, I'll like, there's always like a hump. Like I'll get over this hump with a piece of content, which I've been kind of just like languishing on for a while. And then at some point I'm like rolling. And then I'm like, oh, I'm writing like 8 hours a week or more, just like I'm writing into the night. Like once you get into that point where like this is starting to work, it's starting to fit together, then it's easy to write. Then it's like, man, I can write. I don't like I'll schedule time to write, but the inspiration comes a lot more naturally once it's already in motion.
Hmm.
So that's another thing for me. It's like when you have nothing to start with, you're just starting with a blank page. That's the hardest point. And then usually once you get kind of over halfway point, it's going to get a lot easier.
Yep.
Um, I think there's other things that I've learned. There's other like tools that I'm learning to use. So definitely learn how to use the latest LLM tools, ChatGPT. Um, my experience with ChatGPT is that it's really not going to produce great content off the bat, but it is an excellent editing partner. I mean, unless you have someone who is a writer and they're willing to read and edit your essays, that's probably a good bet. You should work with them, but most of us don't. And ChatGPT is an excellent editor. Now you have to like learn. the style that you like and how to prompt it to write in the way that you want it to write and edit in the way that you want it to edit. But once you figure out the right prompts, it is an excellent editing partner. And so I can have it like read through one of my chapters that I wrote, and I can say, "Hey, like, is this consistent? Does this have a consistent theme? Would you recommend any specific edits to like introduce more clarity, or can I shorten this, make it more concise?" And like it's going to give you all these ideas, and you're going to throw away most of them, but some of them are useful. And that's actually become like a really useful part of my writing process, is just like having an editor in the
Hmm.
computer. It's great.
Yeah.
Another thing I've learned is the text to speech tools are good enough now that you can plug in your text, your essay, and have it read back to you by a somewhat normal human sounding voice. And that doesn't sound very important, but I find that if your writing sounds good when it's read back to you, then it's going to read much better. And if it sounds kind of choppy and disjointed and it doesn't really flow right when it's read back to you, then it's not a good read. You need to edit it more. You probably need to rewrite some parts. And for me, that's been a game changer. Just being able to have like a partner, like an LLM text to speech partner, just reading things back to me, because I'm able to hear it and pick out the things that don't work. And that's been a really, really powerful tool for me to actually improve the flow of writing. I mean, it's not perfect. My writing isn't perfect, but having these tools available can definitely level up your writing pretty fast if you're not already using them.
Mm. Yeah, I need to start applying some of those, man. And I was just curious to ask, when you talk about style, like knowing the style that you want it to sound like, what is an example of a prompt of that? Like in the style of a mid-20s tech exec, or like or tech worker, like what exactly would you describe as a prompt to get it into the style that you want?
Yeah, so first of all, you have to know what kind of writing you enjoy reading. So you figure out what, like, you have your own taste, whether you know it or not, you have your own taste. Start to think about what your taste is. What kind of essays do you enjoy reading? What kind of articles resonate with you? What kind of books resonate with you? And and just try to understand if that is a good fit for your style. Like you're basically all artists are basically just taking the best bits and pieces from other artists that they really like and trying to put their own spin on it. And it's no different with writing. The difference now is you can actually prompt those styles into your editor. So it's kind of a hack that we never had before. But for me personally, I enjoy the writing of Paul Graham, who I already mentioned. His essays are legendary, and he writes about all things, but a lot of his writing is about startups and how to build a company. But it's really kind of deeper philosophy, most of his writing. There's other writers who I really enjoy. Naval Ravikant, Seth Godin. These are people who, their writing resonates with me. Like Seth Godin has a really good kind of witty humor. Naval Ravikant has very concise writing. Like most of his writing is just things he tweeted about. And and if you've ever read the almanac, the Navalmanac, the almanac of Ravikant, it's basically a collection of things that he said, little tweets and things he said on podcasts. And he's a very clear thinker. So I think his style resonates with me a lot. And basically having, two or three of your favorite writers as your editors is like a hack. It really can up level your own writing. And again,
Mm-hmm.
like GPT-4 or whatever we're at now, it's not perfect. It's not better than a human just right off the bat. It's going to make a lot of recommendations that you don't like. Just throw those away, but you can pick out these really really special bits of writing that come out of this LLM that um, you wouldn't have thought of yourself, or you wouldn't have thought of a better way to make your own writing more concise,
Hmm.
or help it flow better. So for me, a prompt would the like a prompt that I use would be like, hey, write in the style of Seth Godin and Paul Graham. Edit my writing for concise, make my writing more concise. Try to make it witty. Make sure it's humorous, but stick with the theme of my essay. And basically just something that simple is going to help you a lot as an editor.
Mm. Yeah, no, I need to get on these prompts, man, because I feel like I see it so much in social media nowadays. Like it's so obvious to me when somebody is employing GPT very effectively. They're like in terms of volume of content and consistency in voice and just like the style and the way it reads. I'm like, okay, this is kind of generic, but like it's really good, objectively. And I think I'm just a little hypercritical of it because I've always loved to write and I can sort of see through it in some ways, but I think a lot of people it might just continues like just go over their heads a little bit in terms of like how much someone is using it, which is not a bad thing. It's just like maybe I'm just being stubborn and like kind of holding on to my old way of living and old way of doing things. But yeah, it's a really innovative approach for sure. And a good way to stir up the creative juices, I think.
Yeah. I mean, I've also tried tools that claim to just generate SEO optimized articles, and I've played around with these to see like what is the state of the art. Like there's a tool called Pen Friend that I've tried using. I think it's like $50 a month or something, and it basically like generates these SEO optimized articles about whatever subject you want to write about. And man, if that's the state of the art, then we still aren't better than human writers, because it just
Hmm.
generates kind of like generic garbo.
That's how I
And
felt too.
and I mean, I don't think I'm being like I like read this essay that's completely AI generated, and it's not there yet. I don't think we're that far from LLMs being able to write probably as good as a human. And maybe your average human, it might be there. But I think it's much better used as an editing tool, at least for now. So
Hmm.
thinking of it as like a partner that you're working with is probably a better way to think about it than here's the idea that I have, turn this into a 1,000 word essay or something. It just isn't
Yeah.
quite there yet.
Yeah. Yeah. I hear that. I heard about people just writing books and pumping them out on Amazon. Like ever since GPT became a thing, like people were just all of a sudden they have two, three, four books out there on Amazon. And it just that process, I don't know, it dilutes it for me in a lot of ways. And it's harder to find like the real gems out there. But I think, as always, the cream will rise to the top, and you'll be able to understand um, whether someone is actually coming up with new ideas or if they're just taking rehashed ideas and plugging them through one of these models and then packaging it into a book and trying to make a quick buck.
I think you're right. I think the best writing is still going to bubble up to the top, and the
Hmm.
best writing is probably still a really good human writer that now can probably just work their magic faster than they could before.
Hmm. For sure. So I want to ask you a random question if you're prepared for that.
Sure.
So, um, I've been doing a lot of research in this health and wellness space for so many years now. And I found there's two things that people seem to say are like these level ups, these game changing habits or, changes that they made in their lives. One of them is meditation, and the other one is quitting alcohol. And I'm curious what your relationship is with both of those things. Maybe starting with alcohol. Have you shifted your perception of drinking over time, or like how has that progressed for you. I'm just curious because I've seen a lot of shifts happening in people in the way that they look at alcohol, and you can see in the rise of the market too, with the non-alcoholic market just increasing like 10x in the last few years. And also I read somewhere that Gen Z is not going out and partying as much at a young age, which was crazy. Like a lot of people, like the time they said they had their first drink, uh, being before 21 has dropped, substantially in the last few years. So I'm just curious what your thoughts are on that, and like, if maybe if society is trending more towards a non-alcoholic sober lifestyle, or if that's something you've explored.
Yeah, I see alcohol as a drug, just like everything else we put in our bodies. And there's a place for it, and I totally respect people when they don't want to drink. Personally, I've reduced my alcohol consumption a lot since my 20s, but I think that's probably typical of most people getting older.
Hmm.
I don't think I'm not like consciously avoiding alcohol at all costs. I still have a beer with dinner, like,
Hmm.
or a glass of wine. I think it's probably worse for people that are unable to have just one beer or one glass of wine. I think that's kind of when it becomes a problem.
Hmm.
For me personally, I'll go out and have a beer or two. I still drink alcohol. I think the biggest thing to worry about when it comes to alcohol for someone like me, who's like very casual drinker, um, as long as it's not impeding your sleep, then you're
Mm.
probably fine.
Yeah.
If you have to have a glass of wine before bed, then you're doing it wrong because it's we already have enough data to show that it's not good for sleep. It makes your sleep worse. And in fact, my hangovers now, if I ever have a hangover, like after a wedding or something, it's all based on whether or not I got good sleep and less to do if I had like 4 or 5 beers. Like it really comes down to sleep most of the time, at least for me.
Mm. Hmm.
So that's kind of my take on alcohol. I think like don't let it interfere with your sleep too much.
Hmm.
If you're actually getting drunk one time a week, I think that's probably okay, but you should really just, make sure that you have a lot of time the next day to sleep in. You're going to get
Hmm.
really shitty sleep that night. So you're going to have to make up with it with like literally 10 or more hours in bed. And
Hmm.
that sounds kind of like way too much, but like if you actually are serious about if you want to drink and you don't want it to affect your health negatively, just sleep more, and you're probably going to reduce most of the negative side effects. Um,
Mm.
I mean, for me personally, I think it's great that people are drinking less, when like younger people especially. But I also see things like people are doing mushrooms casually, like magic mushrooms at parties,
Yeah.
and like I think that like if Gen Z's not drinking but they're doing a bunch of magic mushrooms at parties instead, like that's not a great substitute. Like I think magic mushrooms are great and they have their place, and I think they'll have some really profound changes in the medical world in the years to come. But if it's not a party drug, if you're taking that at a party, like you're probably better off having a couple beers rather than a couple grams of magic mushroom. That's my take. I think these are drugs. We should use them and treat them as if they're drugs. I treat my caffeine and my coffee as a drug. I
Hmm.
treat my alcohol as a drug if I'm actually like going out and like socializing with people. It's a lot more
Hmm.
fun if you have a couple beers than if you have zero beers and you're just like around everyone else drinking. That's
Yeah.
that's been my experience. I think
That.
recently I was at a party with my friends celebrating. It was a baby shower for one of my best friends, and and like I wasn't drinking that night, and neither was one of my buddies, Diego. And and Diego and I were just like stone cold sober, surrounded by just drunk idiots. And so it's like it's obviously fun to hang out with friends, like it's no problem. But I was like, I realized like, this can be done. Probably we can probably have fun without getting this hammered.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. That's a balanced take on it all, man. I definitely appreciate the part about sleep, and how I always felt like that was what was causing my hangovers, you know, like that was what was always really bringing me down for the next couple of days was my lack of sleep and the lack of recovery, and then it's just compounded by the alcohol on top of it. Um, so what time do you try to get to bed every single night? Do you have a pretty regimented sleep schedule?
I try to keep a regimented sleep schedule. Um, and you know, I'm just like everybody else. It's so hard to get to bed on time. I'm like kind of a night owl, not like a hardcore night owl, but like naturally I'd probably go to sleep, like around midnight. And I'm
Hmm.
trying to go to sleep around 11. And I'm hitting that number, probably half the time. And half the time I'm staying up late. There's certain things that affect it. Like definitely if I'm smoking weed, or if I'm doing like if I'm taking THC like gummies or something, it keeps me up way too late. So that's one
Hmm.
thing, like cutting that down in my life has been huge for my sleep, just because I get to sleep on time a lot more often. Um, and then there's other things, like if I'm on my computer working late, then I'm much more likely to stay up late.
Yeah.
If there's like blue light glasses are kind of a myth, but like blue light does keep you up. So like you should actually be pretty serious about how you handle the light in your environment. And I was talking to you actually before the podcast about how I'm like literally while I'm traveling, I'm carrying around this like portable lamp because it gives me the ability to control the light in my environment no matter where I'm traveling to, which sounds kind of crazy, but I think that light is much more important for controlling our sleep rhythm than people realize.
Hmm.
Basically, turn on the yellow light when it's getting later. Turn on the white or blue light in the morning. Like as soon as you wake up, get that morning light. Obviously, the sun is the best way to get that light, and that can kind of regulate your sleep. But yeah, definitely switch to yellow light when after the sun goes down.
Not red
And
light.
well, so red light works too if you're really hardcore about it. Like I think that works probably even better. But like
Hmm.
that's also kind of creepy to just like exist in red light like after the sun goes down.
Yeah, you're
So
like a
like I
reptile in like a in a lab or something, just basking in the red light, charging up for the next day.
yeah, I mean if like people walk into you just like in your red light cave, I mean, they probably think you're a crazy person, but I think there's
Yeah.
probably a lot of truth to like people that want to take it that far. Personally, like
Hmm.
I am just orange or warm light is good enough for me. Um,
Hmm.
and build it into like a wind down routine. That helps a lot for me. Like actually dim the lights, turn orange lights on, and have like a routine where it's like, okay, no phone or no computer at a certain time, certainly no blue light once it gets to like 7 p.m. And then your body will kind of naturally start to wind down. And
Hmm.
there's ways that you can fuck that up. So just avoid the ways that you can fuck it up, and try to stick to your wind down routine. For me, I think the biggest issue was um, was ingesting THC anytime at night. Like it kept me up anytime I did that, and it's just like not beneficial. Even though I think there are benefits to like to weed to THC, but it ruined my sleep. So that's one thing. Cutting that out, or at least reducing it a lot, has helped a lot.
Hmm.
But yeah, I aim for 11 p.m., but it honestly doesn't really matter. Just try to stay pretty consistent with it.
So you don't have a fully optimized morning routine?
My morning routine is not fully optimized, although parts of it are. Like I give myself 30 minutes from when I wake up to when like I need to begin working, or like begin, either working or exercising. Um, I want to be able to wake up, and within 30 minutes I'm outside getting natural light. I'm always waking up after the sun's up, so that's never a problem. That's kind of part of the routine. Obviously, the like wake up, brush your teeth, do whatever you got to do. I give myself 30 minutes for that, but I don't think it's as regimented as it could be. Like I could really dial it in more than it is.
Hmm.
I think the lighting is really probably the most important thing, at least that I've noticed in the morning and nighttime routines. I'm experimenting with other things. Like I'm experimenting with like turning on this like little humidifier, like essential oil like vaporizer, and I'm experimenting with like training myself to like smell this specific scent and then like feel like it's bedtime.
Mm,
And it's super early, like experimenting with this, but I think there's other ways you can try to hack your sleep. At the end of the day, I think it's like mostly lighting matters the most.
yeah. Yeah. I have this thing that I like to do where I am in bed, I'm winding down 10:30 to 11, and then I have the lights off and I get a text and I'll check the text and it's in a dark room and the brightest light possible just beams into my eyes. And I'm like wondering why I can't sleep well. Why is my sleep schedule off? It's like it's so obvious, but it's so hard to do at the same time. To put your phone away for the last couple hours because it's nice to have that like mindless entertainment to like to phase out for the night. So
Yeah.
it's so hard to completely flip that and be sort of productive or doing things that are, I guess, healthier, writing or reading in the nighttime, or meditating or even anything like that. Um,
Yeah.
Easier said than done though.
Yeah, I have another fun little hack that I've been doing for years now, but I realize this is probably pretty weird, and I don't think most people do this. But I think I think it kind of works, and it's like if you're having kind of insomnia or just like trouble going to sleep, which I think everybody has at some point or another. Um, what I've learned to do is to kind of take advantage of it. And what I mean by that is I'll be in bed and I'll be like, okay, for whatever reason, I cannot go to sleep. I'm like my mind's racing or whatever. My body just doesn't feel sleepy. Um, I actually use that as a chance to think through ideas and problem solve, especially like
Mm,
visually. I'm able to like think through problems when I'm kind of in between awake and sleep. And it's kind of a lot like meditation, but I think it's kind of like directed meditation. It's like I have this problem. I'm like, hey, what else am I gonna do? I can't sleep. Like if I take my phone out, I'm gonna have a worse time sleeping. So like let's use this time to actually think through something. So this is something I like to do whenever I'm like having trouble sleeping. I'll just lay in bed and think through, especially like design problems, like visual problem solving for me. Um,
mm,
it's been kind of a hack. And what I've noticed is if I come up with a solution to a problem while I'm in this like half wake, half sleep mode, then I will I will be very likely to remember it the next day or the next time I try to solve the problem. I have already kind of created the pathway in my brain and I can recreate that pathway much, much faster. So even if I don't remember like exactly what the answer was, the next time I think through it, it feels like I've kind of thought through it before, which I have,
mhm.
and it's easier to come to that kind of conclusion. And like I can reevaluate it the next day and be like, huh, you know what? Maybe that wasn't as good of an idea as I thought, or that solution wasn't perfect, but like it definitely can move the ball forward in things in your life. Um, the danger of this is if it's like a, like a seriously anxiety inducing problem, then it'll just probably make your sleep worse and it might not actually help that much. But if it is something that is like a very kind of self-contained specific problem that you're trying to solve, I've found it very useful.
Mm. Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. Is like the type of problems that you're really stewing on have to be carefully selected. Otherwise, you can really go down a rabbit hole and end up staying up all night worrying about some work stressor or something in your family life or your relationship. So, yeah, gotta be careful with that one. But it's also, I've talked about like sleep meditation and stuff on the podcast where, you have this limited access to your subconscious right before you go to bed and right after you wake up, and you're in this sort of dreamlike state on both ends of that, and what you put into your mind at that moment is so powerful. Like if you wake up first thing in the morning and you grab a book and you're trying to learn a new subject, you're trying to learn this new way of thinking, and you immediately dive into that, it's ingraining it in your subconscious a lot faster. And same thing if you go up and you get out, like you said in the morning, first thing in the morning, go out, walk around outside and let the ideas come up. you're going to get access to things that normally would not come to you. So
Mm.
I like what you're saying on the reverse end of that. Right before you go to bed, start to get some of those ideas bubbling up to the surface, and then 8 hours. It's like we really have no idea what is going on for those 8 hours of time. It's your brain is processing things, forming memories, and if you feed it the right material, you can make a breakthrough overnight without doing anything. It's like,
Yeah, I've not gotten to the point where I'm like lucid dreaming and actually like straight up on a chalkboard in my dreams figuring shit out. That's maybe the next level. But
hmm
definitely just like literally sleeping on a problem will help you solve it, which sounds
hmm
so easy, but it's so true. Like
yeah,
whenever I'm like learning a song on piano, like it's something so simple. It's just like you're kind of working through like a routine or subroutine. Like it's obviously just kind of you're playing this pattern, and it's like finger movements. I'm not trying to like write any concerto. I'm just like trying to learn a new song, and I'll get
hmm
stuck. And then like this has happened to me so many times now that I know it works. I'll get stuck and I'll be like, okay, I'm done. I'm gonna sleep, and then I'm gonna try this tomorrow. And then next day, I just breeze through it.
hmm
And like it's crazy that that is like literally just sleeping solves problems.
yeah, yeah. No, that's so true. Yeah, it can be a really powerful tool if you use it right. It's not just necessarily an obligation. It is to some extent. Your body needs it, your mind needs it, but it can also be a powerful tool to use to sort of hack yourself and your habits in a lot of ways.
Absolutely. Especially important when you're traveling. Because
hmm
that was one thing like I would not travel if I had a standing meeting at like 3 a.m. And I had friends that did do that while they were traveling in Bali. They had to basically wake up pretty much every night or like every other night at like 3 a.m., take a meeting, go back to sleep. Like that, yeah, if you have to do that, then I don't think the travel's worth it.
Yeah.
And in fact, one of my roommates in Bali for a month, he was waking up every single night at like 4 a.m. taking pretty important like work calls. And surprise, surprise, after a couple of weeks of this, he got really sick. Like
hmm
like he got a bad cold or whatever, not like Bali sick. He like got sick just because he wasn't sleeping well.
Right.
And I think that's like sleep is it's the cornerstone of good health in general, but definitely when you're traveling, that should be top of your list of things you're not about to sacrifice for just about anything. And
hmm
that's kind of like for me, I was happy to take a meeting at like 11, 12, sometimes 1 a.m. just because I'm a night owl, but I would never do that if I also had to wake up at like 6 or 7 a.m. I could only do that if I still could get my like 8 hours of sleep.
hmm Yeah. God, that'd be rough. I can't imagine switching your schedule like that and doing that long term. I know people do it when they're like nurses, or people that have to work the night shift, but man, I mean, the long term damage that does is probably massive.
Yeah.
What about working out? Do you feel like working out in the morning or the afternoon is better, or the evening? What is your routine?
Yeah, I think it's different for everybody, but ideally for me, it would be a morning workout. I think getting your body moving in the morning is a good thing.
hmm
And then also my brain isn't super functional in the morning, so it's like, just get out and do your workout. That'll get the juices flowing and wake you up a bit. And then the other benefit is if you're doing like late night workouts, it's definitely going to affect your sleep. So like we're back to sleep again, but like I definitely avoid doing like workouts at night. Occasionally I'll do them, and I had to do them when I was traveling sometimes. But yeah, I mean, again, try to avoid fucking up your sleep. That's going to
Yeah.
be kind of your cornerstone of good health. And for me, I mean, that I was very strict about my sleep while I was traveling and my exercise while I was traveling. And I really didn't get sick. Like I got kind of sick one time. I got like food poisoning one time. And then I got a little bit sick another time where I was kind of like mild fever for a night or two. But yeah, I mean, 7.5 months traveling and really never got very sick. And I kind of attribute that to having pretty good discipline about my sleep and my exercise. And
Mm-hmm.
and my exercise wasn't anything crazy. Like when I was near gyms, I would be going to the gym a couple times a week. Um, I was walking a lot. So I think that's always good when you're traveling, like just walk a lot, get moving a lot. And then I did TRX exercises. Like TRX, I feel like I'm a salesperson for TRX at this point, but like TRX is such a hack, especially
Mm-hmm.
when you're traveling. It weighs nothing, it costs nothing. You can do it anywhere on any door frame. And that was, I mean, there's just no excuse. I was just like, what is your excuse for not like walking 4 steps to the door and doing your TRX workout that takes 30 minutes?
Oh
So like
yeah,
that was one of
got
those
to do
things
it.
where just design your environment so you can get your workouts in. I mean, ideally, I have a gym nearby, and I would go to the gym a couple times a week. I've also tried to incorporate cold plunges into my weekly routines, and I've been pretty good about that. Um, trying
Cold
to do 1 or
showers.
2. So cold showers, less so. I mean,
Okay.
I think that's totally valid, but I was really trying to like do straight up like polar plunges
Mm.
once or twice a week. So that was kind of one of my goals this year, and I've been pretty good with keeping up. I've probably averaged over one a week, and
In
that's
the ocean or actually in like a tub, cold tub?
in a cold tub wherever I
Oh,
could
nice.
find them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I mean, not every place has cold tubs available, but more places than you'd think. You
Mm-hmm.
sometimes you have to look a bit harder on Google Maps and try to find one. And then when I'm in California, I can just go in the ocean because that shit is freezing, and
Yeah.
that I consider that a polar plunge, even though some people enjoy it. I
Yeah.
hate cold water. My body does not do well with it, and that is the reason why I try to do it because it's just a mind over matter thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's so good for you. I feel like the dopamine that you get from it too. I think I saw this on a Huberman episode, but it's something like 2 to 3 times the amount that is released in your brain when you do cocaine, and it lasts much longer. So it's like the same effect. Obviously, it doesn't feel like the same effect, but neurologically, it's there, or neurochemically, it's the same amount, and people just are missing out on these things, People are missing out on these very simple hacks, not emphasizing the sleep, not emphasizing the ability to work with your environment and do a workout with your body weight. I mean, that's incredibly important. Even if you don't have access to a gym or, all the resources, like you can get fit and you can make those changes pretty much whenever you want. And I guess how would you tell somebody, like it seems obvious to us, right? Like the way that we see the world and how we approach some of these things. Um, but how would you describe to somebody like you can overcome these limiting beliefs? Is there like an example that you would use or something in your own life maybe to get through to somebody, to break through that wall that people have up about creating this transformation in their life? Um, I don't know if you in particular had like a moment, like a light bulb moment where you decided that I want to really dive into this. I can reach a higher version of myself or I can reach a new level, or if you've always just kind of been pretty disciplined throughout your life. But I'm just curious what you would tell somebody like that because it's a question I grapple with a lot. How to best get through to somebody and how to tell them that you can do this too.
Yeah, when I think I was like 29, about to turn 30, and I really consciously was like, it's time to start worrying about this. It's
Hmm.
time to start like taking health, exercise, longevity really seriously and really build it into my identity. And like
Hmm.
obviously that's easier said than done, but it's not as hard as you might think. Like just start talking to your friends about it. You probably have a friend that likes to talk about the Huberman podcast. Hang out with your friend, talk about it, ask them where they're getting their information. Like really tell your friends, hey, if you find information about this, about health, wellness, longevity, whatever you're into, send it to me. Even if you don't listen to it, just start to build this into your identity. That was kind of step one for me. And
Hmm.
maybe that kind of I'm making it sound easier than it might be for people, but like for me, it was just kind of like a conscious decision, like, yo, it's time. You're almost 30.
The prospect
I'm
of
not
getting
gonna
old and your body starting to break down a bit do you think that was a trigger?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think it was like because I've had injuries when I was young. When I was like 23, I like fucked up my back really bad and like halfway through a soccer season. And so I've had those issues. Those weren't really even having those like injuries didn't really spark this interest. It was more about like, you know, I have this kind of this hot take that we're in a time where the health system and the medical system that we rely on is about to upgrade, and we're kind of going through this transition. It's a lot more slow moving than some of the other transitions that you see. Like it's not gonna like swoop in and change your life like these AI tools, but it's gonna change very fast, and it already is starting to change. Like CRISPR-Cas9 gene editing, that's becoming very viable. There's already like it's kind of like out of human trials, and like there are now gene editing tools available, and I think so actually um, there is a term for it, so you can actually try to understand this and like put a phrase to it. Um, Medicine 3.0. That's what oh man, what's his name? There's I'm trying to think of the book that I was reading.
Wasn't
Man,
wasn't Harari, was it? Was it
no, no, no.
Yuval? No.
I'm trying to think. He's a very kind of like popular. He's like one of the popular thinkers when it comes to medicine. It'll come to me, but basically we're in this new era where we're starting to realize that like medicine 2.0 was kind of treating issues, and like once you get sick, take the medicine to get better. And now medicine 3.0 is thinking like, what can we do now that will prevent us from getting sick in the first place? And
Hmm.
that's really just how I think about health and wellness now. I think we're going through a massive transition where we're the hot take is really that this is this is the time to start thinking about your preventative wellness, because you want to prevent all these issues now and stay healthy, because there's a lot of really powerful changes on the horizon that are not going to necessarily be able to like rewind the clock, but they will basically help you kind of maintain good health. And if you're
Hmm.
healthy now and you're active now and you're doing all the right preventative things now, then you're going to be able to maintain that for a lot longer than you think. And the hot take is really like it's going to extend health span. Like everyone talks about longevity and like how long people live. It's all just about health span. How long can you live healthily? How long can you
Hmm.
how long can you do the things you want to do? And if you want to play soccer for the rest of your life, start thinking about this now. Start treating your joints now before you get arthritis. Like by the time you get arthritis, I don't know if it's going to be too late, but it's going to be a lot harder to keep playing soccer and like rewind the clock than it is to just start treating your joints well now. So
Hmm.
basically my whole mindset shift when I almost turned 30 was like, hey, I think we're in a time period where preventative health, medicine 3.0, that is the way. And medicine 2.0 still has a place. It's still keeping people alive. People still rely on Western medicine, and it still works. But what we're realizing is like the best cancer cure happened 40 years ago when you stopped smoking cigarettes. And like you just look at the statistics, that is the best that is the best cure for lung cancer. Even though it seems
Hmm.
like, oh, well, it's like a 40-year cure, like wouldn't we rather have just like some pill that we can take when you start to see lung cancer? It's like, no, the pill is to just treat your lungs right 40 years ago. And for me, when I'm like 80 years old, I want to make sure that for the next 50 years, I'm like treating all of my organs very well. And
Hmm.
obviously that means kind of a whole shift in how I think about living my life and prioritizing things like sleep obviously is top priority, and exercise. I'm not like some guy that enjoys going to the gym, but there are just so many obvious benefits to it. And like exercise is a good one, especially like weight training. Weight training is such an obvious win because you can see results pretty immediately. So you can look better, you can feel better, and there's lots of data to prove that it is good for your health span. And so it's like kind of such an obvious change in your life if you aren't doing any weight training. You have to just look no further than you'll feel better every day, you'll look better every day, and you'll have more days where you feel better. Like so to me, I think I just like thinking through this kind of like where we are in this transition. That was kind of the biggest thing for me. It wasn't like some moment or like an injury or anything like that. It was really just like, man, I would like to live a long, healthy life. And it's weird for maybe a 20-year-old to think about what they're going to be like when they're 80. But I think it's less weird for a 30-year-old to start thinking about it. So when I turned 30, I was like, all right, what do I want to do when I'm 80? And
Hmm.
like, how do I want to live my life? And I already think like looking back to when I got injured playing soccer, like that's an injury that's never going to fully heal. And so that's one of those things where if I had shifted this mindset 10 years earlier, I probably would have avoided this injury that now will plague me for the rest of my life. That doesn't mean it's like I can't do the things I want to do, but like that's pretty big. Like if I were 20 years old thinking about what I want to do when I'm 80, I would have prevented an injury that happened when I was like 24. So
Hmm.
I'm hopefully preventing more of these injuries. That obviously means I am not playing competitive soccer 11s, 90-minute 11s like you are. I think I've retired from that. But that doesn't mean I won't play soccer. It just means I have to pick and choose where I'm gonna exert myself, and that's one of them I had to sadly say goodbye to.
Yeah, no, that makes sense, man. I've been struggling with a little bit of a knee injury and little aches and pains here and there. And obviously it's nothing to really complain about. I'm 29. I'm not falling apart at the seams, but at the same time, it is kind of a wake up call around this time. Like what you described, late 20s, about to hit your 30s. I saw it in my roommate last year, Eric. As soon as he turned 29, like the next day, I swear to God, he had like a box of AG greens at the house and was cooking like salmon and broccoli. And I'm like, all right, my man, it's that time. So I think it's a pretty common trend. And so maybe it's not something that you can really hammer home for somebody. It just the light bulb has to go off on its own. And that might just be the natural process of aging. But it also sounded like for you, it was more you kind of were awakened to this possibility of extending your health span by doing certain things now. And so more on the kind of like staying up to speed on the scientific advancements. So would you recommend that as a way to just to like expand your awareness of what you can accomplish with your body and your mind right now?
Yeah, I mean, I think being apprised with what's going on just in like the like biotech, medical tech fields. Like you don't have to know the details, you don't have to be an expert, but like there's some crazy shit going on.
Hmm.
Like there are crazy results that are backed by data, at least in small studies or at least in like N of one. Like look at Brian Johnson, the dude that's like reversing his age. Like that's like a catchy headline, but like he actually publishes all of his data. So you can
Hmm.
like it's open source. He's not faking it. You can literally do the audit yourself. And so like the shit is here. It's not distributed evenly. Like he's spending millions of dollars to reverse his aging. You aren't going to be able to do that, but you are able to get maybe 60, 70, 80% of the results by just changing the most important things in your life. And
Hmm.
I also thought of the guy's name. His name's Peter Attia. Um,
Yeah, I
yeah,
know
so
Peter
he's
too.
yeah, so Peter Attia is great. His latest book is also fantastic. I'm about halfway through it, but Peter Attia is kind of the one that's coining this new like medicine 3.0 movement. And it's like completely different than people like Brian Johnson. Brian Johnson's doing this experimentation on himself. Peter Attia has like years of medical practice and like working with people with preventative medicine, and he's writing about what's the state of the art now. And I mean, it's pretty mind blowing. Like even if you don't believe that things are going to change as drastically as I might believe, just following what Peter Attia is saying about how to live a longer, healthier life without any changes to technology, you can drastically improve how you're feeling every day, how long you're living, and like how more importantly, like how long your health span is. And
Hmm.
so like I think it's worth looking into these changes. Like there are small changes that have big effects, regardless of spending a lot of money on like the latest tech. And so probably try to find those like really easy hacks. Like I mentioned sleep a million times. TRX is another one. Like design your environment so that you're doing these things more often. And like you'll start to see results, you'll feel better, you'll get sick less often, and you'll also like live longer and healthier. And so, I mean, obviously nutrition is a huge one. There's a million people saying a million different things about nutrition, but like there are some core pieces of nutrition that apply to most people that you can follow, that you can get 80% of the way there without listening to all of the like edge case, like marginal nutritional gurus. Like
Hmm.
just like worry about drinking too much sugar in your like energy drinks, or like having too much orange juice. Like these are such basic things that you can change, that like kind of provably have good effects on your health, and like make you look better. Like you're not going to gain as much weight, or you're not going to feel as groggy the next day or something. Like just find whatever 80 gets you 80% of the way there, and you're probably going to feel better, look better, and hopefully live longer.
Hmm. Start small and just start building from there, right?
Yeah.
And also I feel like the short-term habits, the short-term gains that you get from them, for me at least, have been more of a motivating factor, I guess. Everyone will have their own motivation to get healthy and change their mindset around things, but for me it was always that short-term gain, or that sense of accomplishment, or the sense of drive that is like a self-reinforcing cycle. You accomplish one habit and then it builds onto another habit, and then soon enough you have this bedrock of awesome habits that you can rely on. They're not necessarily things that you're experimenting with, they're actually part of your core identity. That has always been really amazing for me in terms of like being able to create change in my life. I need to start incorporating kind of what you're thinking, more of the long-term thinking. I think once you have those both dialed at the same time, you're going to be unstoppable. But yeah, it's always been kind of like a short-term, just seeing the wins stack up. The short-term wins have always been something that really just got me fired up, I guess, and kept the ball rolling. So if you combine the two of them, you'll be a force of nature, that's for sure.
Yeah, short-term gains and long-term gains. They're
Yep.
aligned, especially when
Uh-huh.
you're like weightlifting. So I
Yeah.
think Chris Williamson has like a good quote on that, where he's basically like weightlifting is like one of the only things where you get a preview of what you'll look like if you just keep doing the habit. If you
Yeah.
just keep
Oh,
if
that's
you just
awesome.
keep weightlifting consistently every week,
Yeah.
you're you're going to look like what you look like right after you weightlift. Like you
Yeah.
just get a little extra pump, look at yourself in the mirror, be like, okay, like I like looking jacked. Well, great,
Hmm.
because if you keep doing this for, I don't know, a couple months, 3 months, 4 months, you're gonna look jacked. It's
Hmm.
just it's straightforward.
100%. 100%. Yeah, that's it's a great way to look at it. Get the little preview, get a little sampler of what you look like. Well, man, this has been awesome. I feel like we covered so much more than I expected. I really thought we branched out into a lot of different areas of health and wellness, and always a pleasure picking your brain and learning from you. So appreciate you coming on and sharing the time. And we'll have to set up a few more of these, man. I'm down to do more of a recurring thing, and we can just keep checking in on how these habits are going for us.
Sounds good, man.
Yeah. So where can people find your next offering? I know that your blog is on, or your essays have been coming out on Medium. Is that correct?
Yeah. So I think it's just probably at Matty Reed one on Medium. I'm at
Okay.
Matty Reed one on X. I think I'm at Matty Reed one on like most things. I'm mostly off of Instagram. I dipped my toes back into Instagram just to share the latest essay, but not for long.
Hmm.
But in general, I think yeah, just if you want to follow me on Medium. Eventually, when I have a YouTube channel, I'll let you know what that's called, but it's in the works.
Awesome. Right on. Well, we'll all stay tuned for that. I'm excited for it, and I think everybody else should be as well. And I'll let you get back to your evening, man. I know it's late over there.
Thanks, Danny.
All
Have a
right.
good night.
Peace, brother.